Welcome to All That's Digital Studios. I'm Michael Lucas, and today we're here with Melanie from A Hoarder's Heart.
Well, thank you so much for having me here with you today. I'm so excited to talk about the channel because the channel A Hoarder's Heart talks about humanizing hoarding disorder. I have had hoarding disorder my entire life. You could see the signs of it since I was a child. And as I got older and as the stresses of life just came to me, I handled the trauma, my anxiety, by holding on to these things. And that's how I created this association that things keep me safe. And as I got older, I accumulated more and more things because it was my fortress. I called it my fortress. It kept me safe. The wall of things made me know that I was going to be okay. I could deal with my anxiety. I could deal with anything that came into my life because I had that stuff stored away.
When you say that it protected you in a way, like what do you mean by that? Like what was it saving you from?
So hoarding at its core is a mental disorder. And I struggle with anxiety. I've had anxiety my entire life. So for me, I'll start to feel a panic attack. I'll start to get really anxious. So what I'll do to ease those feelings and to ease that emotion is that I will hold on to these things that make me feel safe. Oh, I have all these things stored away in the basement. So when I feel anxious that I hear something about inflation or I hear that there's shortages about something, I don't have to worry. I got it all stored in the basement. We're okay. We're going to survive. I can calm myself from that panic attack. I can pull myself out and then function throughout the day.
Wow. So when you say that you're going to be okay, like, do you really believe that? Like if you have all the stuff?
Yeah, so maybe I should start from the beginning when I was a child so you can really see where the associations are formed. So when I was about in between 5th and 6th grade, I moved into a new school. And because, everybody goes through that awkward stage, right? And I was the new girl, and I was very sweet, and I was bullied very badly. The kids were just so mean to me because I never fought back. So how did I escape all those emotions and feelings? I would come home and hide in my room. And what was in my room? All my happy things. All my drawings, my posters, stuffed animals, everything that made me happy. So it was my escape, right? And the things at home, my stuffed animal, the New Kids on the Block poster on the wall, didn't call me those names. It didn't judge me. It didn't hurt me. So it became my safe zone. And I didn't feel anxious and hurt and all those awful feelings that you feel when you're like a 13-year-old being bullied and stuff like that. So that's when I first really associating stuff with being safe and secure.
When you were a kid though and doing that, did you know like you were doing it and were you collecting at that point?
So I had collections as a kid. Hoarding disorder is genetic. So as a very small child, sure, I started with like collections, right? Like I had a sticker collection, a My Little Pony collection, and most kids do. But I had collections of collections and collections. I mean, I had so many of them that that's when I can honestly say when I first started seeing that hoarder gene, right? Because I couldn't curate it. It wasn't one item. It was a collection of multitude of things, and I didn't know which to choose. I just wanted all of it to be with me, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what did that turn into? Like what were the amount of things that you were accruing, and do you have that stuff still, like from your childhood?
Oh, I totally have all that stuff. It's sitting in bins in my basement right now. Yeah. Now my mom did get rid of probably half of it because there was a move, and my mom doesn't have hoarding disorder. She actually has a very neat and tidy house. So I didn't grow up with messes and a hoard. It was just my genetic gene, right? It was just already in me because on my father's side, there are some aunts that have like hoarding disorder. So my mom had no idea, right? And she would do what every mom does, right? Like she would declutter stuff, like she would, oh, the kids are in school, oh, they don't play with that, they haven't touched that, and she would get rid of it. But then I would come home and notice that it was gone. I was like, oh no, where is it? Where did it go? I have to now hide my Care Bears because I don't want that to disappear. But she had no idea I was going through that. She was just looking at it like most parents do, like they haven't touched it in like 2 years, toss it out. So that's where I started being that saver. Like, I got to save it. I got to hide it. I got to protect it. I got to save it.
Like, how did you realize, like, and self-diagnose the fact that that's when that started, and these are the things I'm doing? Because a lot of people don't realize their own habits, or they don't realize their conditions.
I didn't realize it until I was older because I was blind to it. I truly was very blind to like the messes and stuff. Like, I classically was probably a level 4 hoarder at that point because you couldn't go out my back door. I had those classic goat trails, right? Like the goat trails is where there's a little path, but all this stuff is piled up really high. I had unusable bathroom because it was filled to the top, you know. Most people with hoarding are just blind to it. They're blind. They know they have this stuff, but it doesn't bother them enough to go through it. There was a couple of aha moments that I had that I was like, I gotta fix this. I gotta turn this around. You know, a lot of that came from my kids in the sense that I was like, they can't have sleepovers, you know, because I'm afraid of their child coming in and God forbid something happens or they go back and I'm like, what's wrong with your house? Why is it messy? Why do you live like this? And also, I didn't want my kids thinking that that was normal because that is all they knew.
And then how about your personal life with that? Like, how hard was it for you to, obviously, you're married, right? And have kids.
God bless them. Yeah.
So, yeah, how hard was that to, like, in the beginning especially, and then, like, what was that dynamic like?
So my husband, he's very patient. He's very laid back, God bless him. And he didn't see it until a little later, right? Like he started seeing like, oh, she's not really letting go of too much stuff. Like, and this is getting more and more and more. And I felt so bad because he'd be like, hey, why don't we clean this up? And I would get defensive at the time because back then I didn't know how to put those emotions. I'd be like, no, can you just leave it? Just leave it alone. And because he loved me so, and I'm pretty laid back too, but he knew that that was a trigger to upset me. And he's like, well, I don't want to upset my wife. So he just kind of put up with it. Luckily, the moment that I decided to change was the moment that he started getting fed up, where he was like, I don't want to live like this. I wasn't raised like this. I want our spaces back. And luckily, by God's grace, that met around the same time where I was ready to change, because that does break a lot of marriages up. When you have one that's a hoarder and one that is not, and now you're fighting for this space back. And the person that's the hoarder, we're going to get defensive, again, because we don't know how to express it, or we just haven't figured out the best way to cope through that anxiety or that depression, right? So luckily now, we're at a point where he's happy because the living room's back, you know what I mean? The bedroom's back, you know, like all these spaces are now back. And I was just very blessed in that point because I kind of feel like if he was more like, no, 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 then we probably would have divorced years ago because I wasn't ready and he wasn't ready.
I think you mentioned it to me before. A lot of times you feel like a trauma can be associated, right?
Yes, there was a trauma in my life that propelled my hoarding into now survival. So when I was 17 years old, I was in a relationship that became very abusive. He became very addicted to drugs. And he, when he was on drugs, he turned into this monster. At first it was like verbal abuse, right? Just putting me down. Nobody loves you. Nobody wants you. Only me. Then it turned into physical abuse, right? And to deal with that mentality, that trauma, that constant putting you down, it felt like he was like ripping my soul out. What did I do to deal with that? I went to what I already knew my entire life. I went back into my room when he was at work, and I surrounded myself with all the things that I had, all the things that made me happy. And it triggered a little bit of a shopping addiction because I would buy things, like let's say a bracelet, but not one bracelet, multiple bracelets. And I'd be like, see, you are pretty. You are worthy. You're not those awful things that this guy is saying that you are. So again, this stuff was a rescue for me because I found that like security in it. I'm not hurt in this room with all of the things that bring me happiness.
Wow. And then I know that it's important to you to talk about this. And a lot of times, like, people have like such a negative connotation to hoarders. And I've
Yes.
gotten to know you. I mean, you're an amazing person.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thanks. But like, how does that like affect you? And why do you think that is important for you to tell other people about this? Like, what do you want them to come away with?
Well, my heart and my intention is to humanize hoarding disorder because myself and a million others hide the hoard, right? Society has attached this stigma, right, to it. And it's because they don't understand it. They don't understand why someone would take their space and fill it up with a multitude of stuff to the point that it's not even functional anymore. So they go to what they would know in the sense of, well, are they lazy? Are they dirty? I don't understand. And since that stigma is attached to hoarding disorder, the hoarder now hides it. They don't get help. They deny it. They close the door. It's very easy to just close that door. And they feel like I did. I felt isolated. I felt alone. I felt like, why can't I get my stuff together? Why can't I jump this hurdle? I'm not dirty. I'm not lazy. I'm not disgusting. But why can I not clean the mess out? And the best analogy I can give is somebody with depression, right? They have depression. It's how their mind is wired. They're in therapy. They're taking the steps to try and be happy, right? So it's like telling somebody with depression, why can't you just be happy? What, you're not happy yet? Why are you miserable all the time? You're such a drag. What happens when that's said to someone with depression? They're gonna isolate themselves more. They're gonna beat themselves up. And internally, they would want nothing more than to be happy at all times. Just like the hoarder wants so desperately to be able to just clean it all out. But there's different processes. There's different mental battles that we have to overcome to get to that point where we can be strong enough to start to let go of all of that stuff and get to that point.
Where are you now with that?
So I was a level 4 hoarder. Now I'm about a level 2 on my way to a level 1. It's a slow process. Again, it took my entire life to get to this point. It's not going to take my entire second half of my life to clean it out. But I've decluttered thousands upon thousands of things, and I did it in a different way. I tackled it in small sections at a time. You'll always hear that on my channel. Do not tackle it in one big. Remember the KonMari method, right? How popular that was? And you would put everything in front of you, and you're like, what sparks joy? Well, for the hoarder, everything sparks joy. Well, that reminds me of that, and that brings me that memory, and I have nostalgia with that, and I might need that, and I want to create something with that. So they get overwhelmed. That's the whole point. You get overwhelmed, and now I'm like, well, I love everything. I can't get to clutter anything. So my suggestion is to start with like a junk drawer, right? Pull out that junk drawer, look into it, and say, what can I declutter? What in this drawer can I declutter? And look for that first thing. And when you pick it up, be like, yeah, I'm letting this go. Because I'll always say that if you let go of one paperclip, I know that paperclip could have been like 10 mental battles for you to get to that point of letting it go. So I will cheer you on if you let go of anything. And the other thing I added was called Jolt, just one little thing a day. So you just let go of one little thing a day. Don't tackle the whole room. You just got to take these baby steps to get to that point because we're actually creating a new habit of decluttering and it actually feeling good. It now feels good if I let go of this one thing and I feel strong and I feel good. And I'm like, wow, maybe I can do this.
That's awesome. And then how, like now too, like you're doing all this and you're kind of helping other people do it. Who was it that you look up to, or like, how did you come up with this?
So it's funny that you see that because I've had many inspirations in my life, but at the core of my soul, I knew that I was meant to do this, but I kind of was like, no. I can't expose this. But watching different documentaries, I think the Minimalists, their documentary, and as they told that story, it inspired me in a way that I was like, you know what? I should tell this story. I should share this story too. Like, other inspirations I have are just like, kind of like, the Tony Robbins and all of them, of like following your, just following your life's purpose. And I mean, I was praying for years, what's my life purpose? What's my life purpose here? And then it just kind of came to me in like in just that moment, like, you're called to humanize hoarding disorder. And I was just like, at first I was like, It took me a year to get to the point, like, all right, let's do this, I'm ready. But it was just something internally, like within my heart, within my soul, that I was like, we're gonna do this.
Thank you for joining us in All That's Digital Studios for episode 1. To hear more about Melanie's story, stay tuned for episode 2.